So I'm going to begin by asking where this bizarre idea came from.
I can never answer that because it's just it's always a process. It's you think about things and situations and you observe things, and then you try and come up with a story that kind of explores those kind of things. And I work very closely with Ephthimis Philippou, my co-writer, that we've written most of my films together. So it's always a dialogue between the two of us. One of us thinks of something, and then the other one adds to it, and then the other one might come up with a fragment of a story and a character, and then it builds from there. So I never know exactly where it started from.
Because, I mean, there's lots that we don't know. I mean, obviously, the illness in particular is something that there's so much ambiguity about it.
Yeah.
Do you know, or are you in the same place as the viewer? Do you like to also be unaware about certain aspects of the story?
Yeah, of course. I mean, whatever I know, I'll put it in the film. I know as much as, the viewer does, or even less sometimes. I always think that, sometimes you're asked all these questions about something that you've constructed and created, and people think that you know much more than what's in the film or in something you've written, but basically it's you might know even less because you do so many things instinctively and unconsciously, and maybe someone who has a certain kind of distance to that thing can observe more things than you can about yourself and about what it is that you're making. So I think sometimes people can tell more about my work than I can. Or I can give an answer, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily the right one or the only one.
So do you think sometimes we can almost be blamed for just kind of reading into stuff too much as audience members? Do you think sometimes we look for certain meanings to things that sometimes necessarily filmmakers aren't trying to convey?
Yes, that's true many times, but at the same time I find that useful as well because it does say things about you, about what you're looking for in the projections that you're making and how you're affected by things that you know about certain things and what you've read about, a filmmaker or a film or a book or whatever, and then you try and impose a lot of that into what you experience. So it's quite an interesting exercise for someone to then think back and see how he reacts to all these works.
Of course, you're working with Colin again, who's just one of my favourite actors. I mean, had you already shot The Lobster by the time the idea was to cast him in this, or when did you decide this he was someone you wanted to collaborate with a second time?
Well, we wrote the Killing of a Sacred Deer after The Lobster, so we usually work one thing at a time. So after we finished filming The Lobster, we started writing the next movie, and I try to not think about other elements of a film when we're writing. So I try to solely focus on the screenplay, and when I feel confident about that, then I start thinking who can be in it, where can we set it, because most of the films we've done so far, they could take place anywhere. So it's always a second part of the process for me to figure out the other elements. So yeah, after we wrote the script, I just felt that Colin was a great choice to work so that we could work together again and build on their relationship.
And as for Nicole, I mean, there's a slight spoiler in this question, I suppose, but I was just wondering, why doesn't she sacrifice herself? Because it would seem, you'd think as a parent, you'd think that would be the thing to do, but she doesn't.
Yeah, that's the nature of some human beings. Some human beings just prefer to save themselves than, and as it says herself, they can have other children.
And I was wondering, I mean, your next one is obviously The Favourite, and I was wondering, I mean, obviously all of your movies are kind of, they feel like they're set in quite distinctive worlds that are very distinctive to your sensibilities as a filmmaker. I mean, tonally, is The Favourite in line with your previous movies? Has it still got that quite similar kind of stilted sort of dialogue between characters?
I guess. I mean, it's because of what we talked about before. It's hard for me to observe those kind of things and be able to say. But I'm, the same person. I worked a lot on finding the right tone for the screenplay and the right writer to work with. So I think, although it is quite a different film because just the setting of it is in the story is quite different, I still think that there's a lot of what I bring into a film is still there.
And can we expect a return to Greece to make movies in the future, or do you see immediately in the future? Do you see yourself sort of making films in America?
I really don't know. Yes, for the moment it just makes more sense for me to be making English language films. But both Colin and Nicole have liked the idea of going to Greece and make a film there. So we might use it as a setting, but mostly I'm going to be making English language films. So I don't know where they're going to be. The
Killing of a Sacred Deer 2 in Greece, that could work. Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey!